When I was a student, my friends and I played a game called Drink Along at Withnell. The rules are simple. You put on the movie Withnell and I, and every time someone on screen has a drink, you have a drink. The first time we played it, I nearly died. It was so chaotic that we quickly made it the basis of a solid, cheap student drinking game, and every weekend we would research which movies were most notorious for their alcoholic intake. One of those movies was Leaving Las Vegas, a movie famous for its alcoholic excess, and by the time the credits rolled, after we'd spent nearly 2 hours drinking along with the movie, we were both extremely drunk and very sad. In Depictions of Alcoholism, I offer some insight into portrayals of alcohol use disorder from my perspective as an alcoholic in recovery. Brothers, sisters, comrades and friends, welcome to Leaving Las Vegas. Synopsis. In a sentence, Leaving Las Vegas is a scorched earth depiction of alcoholism in which the central character sets out to drink himself to death in Las Vegas and, spoiler alert, succeeds. Our main character is Ben, played by Nicolas Cage, a Hollywood screenwriter in end-stage alcoholism. He's established in 2 short scenes juxtaposed against each other. In the opening shots, Ben is merrily choosing liquor at random from shop shelves, dancing alone in ebullient pleasure. Then immediately, he's interrupting a meeting of film executives, his face pallid and clammy, and it's obvious that he's become a burden to the colleagues who used to love and admire him.
This is all I have in cash, huh? Please, don't drink it in here, huh? And look, I think it would be the best thing if you don't contact me again.
His suit doesn't fit, like he's recently rapidly lost weight. He makes people uncomfortable, like they're aware of his reputation. He humiliates himself, begging for booze money. We're less than 4 minutes in, and the alcoholics in the audience are already feeling very uncomfortable. He goes to a bar and strikes out pathetically with a woman he was hitting on. We're given this line, delivered in a way only Nicolas Cage can do, which summarizes the movie's entire premise.
Maybe you shouldn't drink so much.
Maybe I shouldn't breathe so much, Terry. Ha ha!
He seeks a night of escapism, hitting a strip club and hiring a sex worker who, after Ben drunkenly blurts out that his wife left him because of his drinking, sucks his wedding ring right off his finger. The next day he goes to the bank to cash a check and is trembling so hard from the effects of alcohol withdrawal that he is unable to sign his own name, and even his regular barman tries to get him to slow down, which is met with anger.
Do you know what time it is? You should be drinking coffee. You're a young guy.
I understand what you're saying. I appreciate your concern. It's not my intention to make you uncomfortable. Please, serve me today, and I'll never come in here again.
He returns to work drunk and nauseous, and he's fired that day. He doesn't fight it. His muted response and his apology indicate that he knew it was coming. There's sympathy in the face of his boss as he hands Ben a large severance check, a testament to the fact that he was once loved. And in that moment, Ben determines to go to Las Vegas and die there.
Well, what are you gonna do now?
I thought I'd move out to Las Vegas.
And only now, with Ben's fading, booze-soaked character firmly established, at 16 minutes in, do we get the opening credits. Our second main character is introduced, fixing her hair in an elevator. Sarah is a kind-hearted sex worker with a Latvian pimp named Yuri, and an off-screen therapist that we never see. The implication being that we, the audience, are the ones who need to untangle her contradictions. Ben drinks as he destroys his possessions, including his passport, and he sets off towards Vegas. Outside the city, he encounters a group of suspicious men who mention Yuri's name, making Ben's meeting with Sarah feel inevitable. Their meeting happens almost immediately. He nearly runs her down at a crosswalk, and their paths are linked from there on. He offers her $500 to go to his booze-filled motel room at the Whole Year Inn, but Ben's more interested in talking than sex.
What's the story? Are you too drunk to come?
I don't care about any of that.
He tells her his plan to drink himself to death, and they seem to have found some, if not connection, then mutual understanding in each other. Ben sells all his possessions, encountering Yuri at the same time, and Yuri, Sarah's pimp, is killed off-screen, his character existing solely to be a point of comparison for Ben's. Yuri's death leaves Sarah free to form an unlikely, no, frankly, unbelievable romantic bond with Ben. She invites Ben back to her place and ultimately asks him to move in. Ben, beginning to look vampiric now with the toll of alcohol, makes one condition to which Sarah agrees.
You can never ask me to stop drinking. Do you understand?
I do. I really do.
After a particularly heavy night, Ben begins to experience severe withdrawals, the beginning of his quick decline. After she tells him that she needs him, he discovers scars on her body, and perhaps briefly understands that she's not just caring for him, but in some perverse way, they're caring for each other. Ben gets beaten up, Sarah fixes him up, and they go away for a couple of days. And at this point, the movie makes us start to wonder if he might actually find some redemption in Sarah, whether there's a chance Ben might turn things around after all, having found something new to live for. Back in Vegas, after getting kicked out of the motel, Ben's health has deteriorated too much to ignore. He has no appetite, except for the bottle. Sarah suggests he see a doctor, which is in fact a euphemism for a choice. Ben's final chance to return to life if he wants to. Ben rejects the lifeline, and Sarah walks in on him with another sex worker. He has deliberately burned his last possible bridge. Sarah is heartbroken and seeks her own self-destruction via a group of college guys. She spends days looking for Ben, seemingly spiraling herself in a pattern similar to Ben's. Close to death, in some anonymous motel room, he finally calls her, She comes to him and finds him barely alive. They finally have sex, and Ben dies. Sarah ends the movie with a monologue about how they accepted each other without any demands that they change for one another. The credits roll after an unthinkably terrible in memorial style shot of Nicolas Cage looking supposedly charming. Oh, okay, excuse me, this has never happened before. Actually, I didn't even know I had a phone. Hello?
Hi, Dan. It's me.
Who's me?
Nick Cage.
Oh, hey buddy, what's up?
You don't think that last shot of me was cool?
Oh, it's not that, mate, I'm just
So
saying...
much time with this character that we thought the audience would feel attacked. And the audience deserved to remember the character as a flawed, but
No, I get the motivation, it's just,
It's just, what?
Well, it's not my place to criticize, but, like... I know we spend a lot of time with Ben, and you want us to feel some sympathy with him, but, like... Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Just think.
Okay, well, objectively, Ben is kind of a prick. Not a tragic hero, just a kind of a selfish prick. And that overly saccharine final shot feels, I don't know, unearned.
Unearned? Now you listen to me, you fucking nobody.
Wow.
I'm Nicolas Cage.
Okay,
I tell you,
I'm just gonna leave this here. Thanks for calling. Let's cut straight to the chase. Is Leaving Las Vegas an accurate depiction of alcoholism? In broad sweeps, no. It is a wildly unlikely, unrealistic movie. But in its details, yes. Leaving Las Vegas is somehow simultaneously extremely unrealistic and extremely accurate. The framework in which the movie exists, featuring two social outcasts spinning so poetically out of control together and both in search of connection in Las Vegas, a city which eschews intimacy in favour of hedonism, is unconvincing even if you're willing to suspend disbelief that two such people might exist and find each other. Look at these two. There's no world in which this smart, worldly young woman swoons for this man. I've been this man. Not only are we not attractive, we have the misguided confidence that we are attractive, and that makes us even less attractive. You have to really trust that this movie knows what it's doing in order for it to work, and I'd make the argument that as hard as the movie tries to force us to like and even empathize with Ben, he has objectively few redeeming qualities aside from his fading charm. He is gross, unpredictable, uncomfortably horny, clumsy, and worst of all, Ben is unapologetically selfish. He is a walking romantic red flag, especially for someone with the hard-fought wisdom of a sex worker like Sarah. But if you're willing to meet the movie on its own poetic terms and understand that it doesn't want you to perceive these characters realistically, but symbolically, then you can allow yourself to see just how unusually well it depicts the details of alcoholism. Those details are painfully accurate, and you can sense the writing comes from experience. In one insightful scene, Ben tries to cash a check at the bank, but his hands are shaking so much from withdrawal that he can't sign his own name. He invents a lie about having recently had brain surgery to cover up for his alcoholism.
On the back of the check, please.
What, can't you just cash it as it is?
I'm sorry, sir. Is there a problem?
I had brain surgery. Why don't I go get some lunch and then, well, come back and take care of it then.
A lot of alcoholics, I suspect, have experienced something similar. It certainly happened to me. I was unable to sign my name to a document at an airport, and it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it just what it's like when your own hands don't fully respond to your requests. When they just won't do what you need them to do. Ben is already 2 years into an alcoholic spiral when we meet him, and the movie does a powerful job of portraying a person who has acknowledged that life and alcohol has defeated him. He is a man capitulating, a fragment of his former self, though we still see glimmers of the charming man he must once have been. Leaving Las Vegas puts us in the room with alcoholism and shuts the curtains. It shows us the kind of suffering and selfishness that goes hand in hand with end-stage alcoholism in a way that few other movies have ever done. It shows not only the dramatic effects like delirium tremens and painful withdrawal, but also the subtler discomforts like insomnia and the inability to eat. In late-stage alcoholism, you won't eat for days, to the point that even if you were sober, it would be dangerous to go so long without real food. In one scene, Sarah cooks some plain rice for Ben and offers it in a way that makes us suspect that he has been hungry for some time already. He can't stomach it, and I understand.
I bought some plain rice. I know you probably don't want to hear it right now, but I think it's something that you could eat. If you get hungry, will you let me know?
In fact, Nicolas Cage doesn't eat a single thing in the entire movie. There's a scene in which he just winds spaghetti around his fork without ever putting any to his mouth. It's these details that paint an intimate but brutal portrait of alcoholism. It feels intimate partially because of the performances and partially because of the budget. Leaving Las Vegas was produced as an indie movie, very purposefully to prevent studio interference. To keep costs down, the director, Mike Figgis, also produced the score for better or worse. Well, actually definitely for worse, because the soundtrack is frankly fucking dreadful. In its details, it paints a filthy, dreary vision of an alcohol binge. And as a record of one particular person's delusional alcoholic fantasy, it's unsurpassed, maybe even unique. As a result of the small budget, like many other kitchen sink cinema verite productions, Leaving Las Vegas borrows a lot of the conventions of documentary filmmaking. It looks cheap, partially shot handheld on grainy Super 16 cameras, on the streets and without permits, for an end result that feels unrehearsed and organic. The camera favours actor close-ups, perhaps less stylistically than for efficiency. Close-ups avoid expensive set designs, large casts, or elaborate lighting. The overall effect is a kind of hallucinatory authenticity. When Ben is in a cheap motel room with a sex worker, it looks like a cheap motel room because it is one. It's not a set designed to look like one. It gives a feeling of grainy, grimy reality. Alcoholism too feels grainy and dark and dirty. The movie feels like it's sensitive to light, as we feel in alcohol withdrawal. The sun feels uncomfortable because we move by night. And although we never get a full delirium tremens sequence, Ben's visions of Sarah as an angelic being feel familiar to anyone whose withdrawal has extended into alcoholic hallucinosis. What is realistic, though, is an insight that doesn't turn up even in much medical literature, and it's this: you can experience severe withdrawal symptoms even while you're still drinking. If you drink 2 bottles of vodka every day for a month, and then reduce it to 1 bottle a day, you might still experience alcohol withdrawal syndrome, despite the fact that the 1 bottle you drank would be enough to get most normal people hammered. I don't recall any other time I've seen that portrayed on screen. But naturally, the authenticity of Leaving Las Vegas comes directly from its writer, John O'Brien. John O'Brien published the novel Leaving Las Vegas in 1990. He was an alcoholic whose interest was in pulling up the stone of the American dream to see what wriggled beneath, in the mould of Bret Easton Ellis and Chuck Palahniuk. After the rights to Leaving Las Vegas were sold, and 2 weeks into the production of the movie, O'Brien took his own life. The director considered abandoning the project, but instead treated the movie as a memorial. In fact, the Rolex Daytona that Ben pawns is O'Brien's real watch. That knowledge changes the complexion of the film. It lends it a sense of gravity that it wouldn't otherwise have, and we feel the weight of the author throughout, always present, always in the background. O'Brien's experience of alcoholism is faithfully recreated, as is his complex relationship with women, whom he saw as caregivers and sex objects, and little else. The movie is not so much a realistic account of alcoholism as it is a realistic document of O'Brien's desires while in active alcoholism. He wanted to be nurtured unconditionally, to have no responsibilities, and to have sex offered casually on demand. These desires themselves are entirely unrealistic, but they are a realistic record of an alcoholic's desires. Make no mistake, Leaving Las Vegas draws a direct line between sex and alcohol. The two are inextricably linked in the movie's mind. We are repeatedly given shots of sexual activity, contrasted and juxtaposed with alcohol consumption, until there is no ambiguity. For Ben at least, his desire for the bottle is real as a normal person's desire for sex. Perhaps the slightly awkward sexual metaphor is the movie's attempt to provide a framework for non-alcoholics to understand Ben's constant drive towards annihilation, which is, I think, the characteristic of alcoholism that the movie captures better than anything else, that drive towards annihilation. But more than that, there's an insinuation, especially in Sarah's story, that sex can be a vehicle for self-destruction just as much as alcohol can. Sarah's violent sexual encounter with a group of college guys parallels Ben's self-harm through alcohol. O'Brien shot himself. His character, Ben, though, has chosen to draw out his death through a weeks-long alcohol binge. The reason why Ben has chosen to die is never fully given. It's left to us to interpret. My own interpretation is twofold. On one hand, Ben wants to die but loves himself too much to do it quickly. The other is that he wants to suffer first. Ben wants to be miserable for as long as possible. Both of these interpretations stand up to my own experience of alcoholism. But the truth of alcoholism is that reasons are not required. In fact, they are rarely even considered. Ben's wife left and he got fired. Many people go through experiences far more catastrophic than Ben's and don't tip over into oblivion. But alcoholics, and I'll remind you before I make this point that I am speaking from experience, are deeply selfish, even narcissistic. We believe the world owes us, and when we do not get our dues, we shrink into a kind of dejection so deep that alcohol is the only salve. Going to Las Vegas to drink yourself to death is like prostrating your suffering in front of the world for all to see, both wanting to be a part of the society and rejecting it simultaneously. It's a way of saying, look world, what you did to me. Look what you've driven me to. This is your fault. This is everyone's fault but mine. And in that way, there has never been a more authentic depiction of alcoholism. Conclusion. Leaving Las Vegas is a weird movie, even by the admittedly weird canon of movies that deal with alcoholism. It feels like a close, first-hand observation of alcoholism by someone who's experienced it themselves, and that feeling is rare. Its observations of alcoholism are authentic and lived in. But it also feels like the lonely fantasy of an alcoholic as they lie suffering. A fantasy that will only be familiar to other alcoholics. It's a desire to be cared for in their suffering by someone with no judgment and always sexually available. In that sense, it's a very accurate documentation of the real thinking of an alcoholic, because when you look beneath the surface, this movie is not a tragic love story, but actually a rather pathetic alcoholic fantasy. I want to be completely alone and drink myself to death and reject everyone in the world, but also be unconditionally loved, preferably by a beautiful, independently wealthy, highly sexual partner who not only encourages my drinking, but actively enables it. In end-stage alcoholism, when we're rolling around on a filthy mattress with the lights off and the curtains drawn, and having burned all our bridges and spurned all efforts to help us, a lot of us have fantasized about a Sarah walking through the door with a silver hip flask full of whiskey, ready to ignore our faults and have unquestioning sex. If leaving Las Vegas fails in other respects, at least it records that selfish alcoholic thinking in a way that no other movie ever has. When you accept that it's not a movie that depicts alcoholism, but rather offers an insight into the writer and his withdrawal fantasies, then it becomes an unlikely masterpiece. That is to say, Leaving Las Vegas is better understood not as a doom-laden love story between the perfect sex worker and a suicidal man both in search of meaning, but as one long, delirious dream sequence in the semi-comatose state of withdrawal. In the same way that, say, 50 Shades of Grey makes more sense when it's interpreted not as a love story between a naive college girl and a surly billionaire, but as a record of the overwrought fantasies of a middle-aged British woman, its author. So can you interpret Leaving Las Vegas. That's a strange comparison, I know, but I stand by it. Because once you see Leaving Las Vegas for what it actually is, a very rare and very unlikely depiction of the shapeless thinking of a late-stage alcoholic, to me, that only increases its power and its value for understanding the delusional nature of alcoholism. Instead of depicting the truth of alcoholism, what's being portrayed in Leaving Las Vegas is what an alcoholic wishes was true. As a movie in its own right, Leaving Las Vegas is distinctly average. But in its scathing portrayal of the grimness of advanced alcoholism, and as a record and as a warning, I rate it 84% proof. Strong stuff. Thank you for watching, and good luck out there.